Welcome to the GuthrieAmerica podcast. We sit down with the amazing people who do life in our community and from here because we believe every story should be told. I'm your host, Hetty Coleman. Today, I'm sitting down with Brian Mays. Before we jump in this conversation with Brian, would you please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast and leave a review? It would mean the world to me. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Grateful to have you with me.
I'm looking forward to it. I've been checking out your podcast episodes. You got some fun stuff out
That
there.
is cool. Thank you so much for doing that. Yeah, I really enjoy just being able to sit down and really learn from people. And also, I'm super inspired by people's stories and kind of how they're navigating life.
Mm-hmm.
And with the GuthrieAmerica podcast, particularly, is just a matter of hopefully people will listen in, get to know about each other, and out of that, we connect even more so as a community and cultivate that.
Mm-hmm.
We're already a great community, right? And people, if you ask people what do they love most about Guthrie, they talk about it's the people. And so, but I just want to cultivate that, and I think it's by us learning. You and I, before we even started recording,
Right.
just learning more about each other, talking about different things in life. Yes. So in that, you were talking about your family. Let's just start there.
Okay.
People love to talk about their families,
Mm-hmm.
and so you can start talking. I'm gonna close the door, but go ahead and start sharing your story.
I have a family of four. There's me, my wife Misty, and then for those who've known me for a long time, like grade school level, I have my son Calvin, and I have had people tell me he looks just like me.
Oh,
And then we have our son Tegan, who is our adopted child. And if you take a look at our family, it's going to be really obvious. Three of us don't tan well. Tegan does.
great way of putting that. I love that.
He was born tan. He's Cheyenne Arapaho, Native American. And one of the things that I was joking with you about is we're going to have Christmas card pictures in about 5 years, like the movie The Blind Side, because Tegan is a big guy. He's going to be bigger than all of us.
And he's 10 right now, right?
Tegan is 10. Calvin is just turned 14.
Gotcha.
So,
do you mind telling us where you and your wife met and kind of give me a little bit of that story?
Okay.
I love those kind of
now
stories. I love those.
That story's a fun one. I should give you some context for it. At the time, I worked at the Oklahoman in web design. So that was my profession. That's going to factor in here in just a minute.
Okay.
So my wife and I met at Village Baptist Church in Oklahoma City. We were both part of the singles program.
Tell us around what time is this?
This would have been around, I think I started going there in 2001 or so. I don't think we really knew each other at all really until maybe 2002 or so. We'd end up at the same functions. The story I like to tell about my wife is the first time I was really aware of her. She came over to my house with some friends. We were watching some movies, and about half hour into this or so, the friend that brought her says, Misty, who is my wife, Misty wants to leave. And I said, okay, well, all right. So I didn't think anything of it, except that I thought Misty's a snob. But it turns out she was going to cook food for homeless people downtown. She told me this story years later.
Oh,
I didn't know.
Goodness.
So my first knowledge of Misty, when I was first aware that she existed, was when I thought she was a snob. She dissed me at my party.
That's great.
But so we got to know each other better. This is where the Oklahoman figures in.
Okay.
I was the young guy on the staff. I was 25, 26 or so, and I made advertisements for them. And we had one come in that I joked around. I would always joke with the head of sales because I was the only single guy on staff. And I would say, hey, did you hire me a spouse yet? Did you hire, is there a spouse that you've hired in the building somewhere that just hook me up? Uh-huh. And they'd always joke, no, Brian, we didn't. We hired people too old for you, this and that. So one day they came in with a client, and it was 8-minute dating. And I joked with them and said, hey, you guys should just send me to this. And they said, oh, yeah, Brian, whatever. I go to lunch, I come back, and they've registered me for 8-minute dating and said, you're going to go speed dating, and you're going to represent us there. And it's our gift to you. And I'm like, okay. So I go and I tell them at church this, and we're just laughing it up. And then Misty and her friends decide, okay, now wait a minute. We're going to have to school you if you're going to 8-minute dating.
Uh-huh.
And of course, I'm being inappropriate. Not crude inappropriate, but I'm saying, okay, I'm sure I go and let's talk about Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
That will win me someone. And they're like, no, Brian, we need to practice. So they sat down with me for one full Sunday afternoon, 4 ladies, and they schooled me on conversation. Now, one of those was Misty. And so we're sitting there talking, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm actually talking to her pretty well. We're making some fun conversation here. And, a few weeks later, asked her out, and she told me, you work too much. You work at the Oklahoman, you teach at 2 schools, and you never go to parties with us because you've got a freelance job going. I'm not dating you. Okay. 6 months later, came about, and she came to me and said, okay, we can date now. And I was working more than ever at that point. But that's how we met. I tell people we met because of 8-minute dating, speed dating, got us together.
But it wasn't even.
But we didn't go to speed dating. Yeah, we didn't go to speed dating.
Right. That's a really great story, though. That is.
It's one of my more fun ones.
And how long have y'all been together now?
Let's see. We've been married since 2006. We dated a year and a half before that. I have to backtrack the years, so about 2003, 4, sometime around then. So
yeah. That is cool. And so, how would Misty describe you? Like, if we were to say, Misty, describe Brian so the audience can know who he is.
It depends on what day.
Let's do a good day. So
not Friday because
not today,
which is today, because on Fridays I wake her up early with me and she goes and does popcorn at school with me. She's not a morning person.
Oh, gotcha.
Very much, but she would tell people that I am a morning person.
Okay.
And so we're polar opposites there. She would probably tell people that I care about my family, that I work hard for them, that I get grumpy, but I'll get ungrumpy too. Yeah. I try to look out for my family as best I can. Yeah, you always miss the mark. We all do. But I care about my kids. She'd tell me that I love playing things with my kids. I love doing really nerdy things with my kids. I mean, we go to Star Wars conventions all as a family. I love taking my kids to that. We go to Lego conventions. We go to comic book conventions or local small things. I try hard to have the same interests and engage with my kids. She'd probably tell you that, but my kids just know Pokemon to a level that a 48-year-old cannot start at. There's too much. And I try. I do. I really do.
Like, what does trying look like? Like, are you like getting the app and learning the different characters, whatever? I do
have the app.
Okay.
I don't play it. It's too much. But my son bought a video game, and I try to play the video game because he wants to trade with me. He gives me names that I don't know, and you nod like you know it, and you absorb some of the things along the way. But man, he can have 2 hours of Pokemon conversation in 15 minutes, and I'm just whiplashed by all. I'm trying to keep up. Yeah. I'm doing my best. But then I realized I've done the same thing with Star Wars to him, but we do meet on Marvel.
Okay. Oh, is that where y'all both align?
Yeah, Calvin and I, we are right there. We go to a movie, and I have to remind him, buddy, no one came to the movie to hear what you have to say about it. But I do want to hear what you have to say. So let's come a second time when no one's here, and you can talk to your heart's content. Missy doesn't get into that part with us, but I love to do those things with my boys. My youngest boy is into swing music, and he's obsessed with the Titanic. I don't know how that started. It's a weird thing to be obsessed with. And so I look up things for him on that. I'll find little diving videos on YouTube. He loves to watch those with us. So, yeah, I try to get engaged with my family's interests as much as I can because I drag them through mine.
Yeah. So now, talking about family, you're raising your own family now, got your children, married, all that. Let's kind of like just backtrack and talk about you growing up in Guthrie.
Okay.
Like, what was that like for you? I know one of the things that you and I talked about was like your experience may have been a little bit different from most because you had to ride the bus where you didn't live in town. So, and I don't know. And when you said that, I was like, I don't know if I've had anybody on yet who I think Neil lived a little bit out. I think out west. I think he lived farm life.
So one of the teachers jokingly said the area that we lived in was Edmond Way North.
Okay.
Because we are south of Guthrie. Growing up, a lot of people haven't heard of the road Simpson Road.
Okay.
Just like the cartoon show. So it was fun when the cartoon show came out for people to realize, like, wait a minute, you live on Simpson Road. Do you know Bart Simpson? Like, no, I don't know. But the fun thing was, though, that Simpson Road was named after my great grandparents.
Oh, really?
So at the time, you could start with our house and you could go down Simpson Road and just go west until you hit Broadway. It's all family. All of them. And
Wow.
that's like a mile and a half stretch. Back in the day, they just got a big plot of land and then divided it among all the kids. Some of the kids still live there. It's a lot different now. But so, yeah, we lived 7 miles south of Guthrie and 7 miles north of Edmond. So we didn't end up in Guthrie a lot.
Okay.
We rode the bus, which was, looking back, I don't know how we lived through that. Because there were, so imagine you've got we've all been in the classroom. So there's one teacher, they're struggling to keep control of a class of 25 kids. Well, there's more than 25 kids on a school bus, and that school bus driver's attention, and this is the 80s. That school bus driver's attention is divided between disciplining all these kids on the school bus, who range from 4 to 18 at times.
Yeah,
and they're trying to discipline them and drive the bus. And oh my goodness, there were times where there were just kids you knew to avoid. It's like, don't go hang around them. That's a terrorist act waiting to happen right there. And then you had your friends, but most of us that were out there were real country kids because we rode. I mean, we didn't show up at school at 8 o'clock. That's what my kids do today. They don't know anything but showing up at school at 8 o'clock, and in 10 minutes your class is open. We were ready at 7 a.m. to get on the school bus, and it would come pick us up. And then I wouldn't get to school until when I was in high school and junior high. I'd get to school at 10 after 8.
Oh, wow.
And so I was on the bus for over an hour.
Wow.
And so you have to figure out how to keep your sanity. I'd try, being an artist, I'd try to draw on the bus. You can't draw on the bumpy bus. You just can't. You don't try after a while. You'd read on the bus. You'd have some buddies. We'd trade baseball cards. I had a few baseball card friends. But yeah, so then my sister had kids, and they live on my parents' land. And so my mother took them to school every single day until my nephew got to drive. And I said one time, why didn't you take us to school all that time? Because Mom did not want to take us to school. The school bus was late. My sister and I were getting stressed. She was not taking us to school. If we got there at 9:30, that's when we got there. Because we had a substitute. Oh, you hated the substitute bus driver days. Yeah. They didn't know where they were going, and I was late to school at times. late to Miss Allen's Spanish class. 15 minutes getting tardies and I'd have to go beg her. It's like, I didn't make the school bus late.
Yeah,
I really was. So yeah, but Mom took them to school every day of their school life. My nephew's graduated now, and she said, "Oh no, I heard the stories about you on the school bus. I wasn't letting my grandkids go." Like, oh. Now, wait a minute. So you throw us to the wolves.
Yes. No, parents, I mean, now people tell me all the time, like, being a grandparent is way better than being a parent. Like, they love their grandkids more than their kids. I'm like, I haven't experienced yet. So
my mother, she tells me that. She says, well, they're grandkids. You didn't get to do this
she
because you're not a
grandkid.
She
doesn't even sugarcoat it.
She doesn't even try.
That is pretty amazing. She drove them to school.
Every day.
And did drive you to school?
No, it was pulling teeth to get her to drive us to school.
That is so funny. Now, your sister, do you just have a sister?
Okay. I have a sister.
Just you and your sister?
Yep.
What grade was you? How?
She was 3 years behind us.
Okay,
she was
so
95.
She's a freshman?
So we went to school together for 1 year.
Okay.
I was the first Mays in our generation to come through. Now, my dad went through there, my Uncle Merle, my Aunt Rhonda, my Aunt Carol, Uncle Roscoe, they all went through there. And in fact, when we would go there for our reunions, my Uncle Roscoe would be there too.
Okay.
And my dad would too.
Okay.
They shared the same 5-year spans with us. But so I was the first Mays grandkid to go through. And I was the kid, I didn't like getting in trouble. I was the quiet one. I was the nerdy kid that got picked on a little bit. I was a nice kid. We'll just say that I had one sister and 3 cousins. They're not me. They're wonderful people. They're not me. And I think when they saw them, I feel sorry for them. I think when the teachers saw Mays, they thought, oh, another Brian. Not another Brian.
Not another.
My sister is so far from being another Brian.
It's completely different.
She was, yeah, she went to, so my cousin Todd was there with us as well. He was, I think, 2 years behind us.
Okay. So your sister graduated with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to have to ask Bernie. And tell me her name.
Her name's Amy.
Amy.
These days it's Amy Clarkson, I believe. She's not married anymore, but I think she still has her last name.
Okay.
Amy Clarkson.
Okay. So. Gotcha. Well, so that is really cool talking about the school. See, that's another great question. See, that's the reason I have different people on, because I never talk about, I don't think I have asked anybody about their experience on the school bus.
Mm-hmm.
And listening to you tell me about the school bus, like a 4-year-old through 18-year-old all on the bus for an hour. That sounds...
It's volatile.
Yes, that sounds crazy. I used to ride, I rode the bus for a little while, but man, I never thought about it like that. Like, that has to be a crazy, because you're trying to care for little kids, and then you're trying to probably get on us older kids. Or, you know, man.
Well, they ship the older
bus
kids.
drivers. Shout out to bus drivers right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yes. And they'd shuffle the older kids to the back. But that's where they can get in the most trouble.
Yeah.
And you got a guy like me, like, I don't want to go in the back. They're gonna thug me. I mean, come on, look at who you're sitting to the back seat here. Do you know what I'm headed for?
Okay, so since you're saying that, it feels like you're open, like having this nerdy aspect about your life and growing up in this way. What movie have you watched and you're like, that's me? Do you have a movie that you've watched and you like?
Man, I've seen Star Wars 5,000 times. I can recite it. I know it all. Misty would joke and say, Brian, you even know when they sigh. But I tell people that movie not only is me, but I grew up drawing that. So I tell people Star Wars is one of the things directly related to the reason I'm where I am today professionally, because I grew up drawing I started when I was in first grade, 6 years old. Yeah. And it's one of those things that just falls out of the pencil when I'm stuck. It'll just start falling out when I'm drawing. And I've brainwashed my oldest, my youngest has avoided the brainwashing. I can send you, if you want, as one of these fun things, a picture of us and Mark Hamill together. And I've got my son, he's 3 years old, and of course we're their buddy, arm in arm. He leans into the kid. Misty looks like a photo bomber on the other side. Yeah. But definitely the movie would be Star Wars. But after that, if you want one that applies to kind of my persona, Edward Scissorhands.
Oh, okay.
That's one that surprises people. I love the art in that, and I relate to the character. It's kind of an outcast, misfit type of deal. I don't really consider myself there these days, unless I do that on purpose, and I do sometimes. But I love Edward Scissorhands. I can watch that any day, anytime. So
okay, Edward Scissorhands, the jam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, Edward Scissorhands is a really good movie. And I can see where you're coming from with the character and all that stuff. So, tell me about. Let's just go through each school. Okay, all right. Go through each school. Talk to me about your teachers.
I'm a banner kid.
You're a banner kid.
I'm a banner kid.
Yeah. So Banner 1 year, and then went to what? Cotterell?
No, Central.
Central, Central.
Yeah,
so
I missed.
I'm sorry.
So I remember all my teachers until we get to about junior high. I start losing them then.
Really? I was sure you was gonna be able to drop them.
I can still drop some of them from junior high. I can drop all of them up through then. But you've had a few friends of mine, Amanda and Aaron and Neil. Yes. We were all in that same class. And so we went.
You were all in which class?
We were all in the same class, mostly from first grade through sixth grade.
Okay, yeah.
So Amanda and I definitely we were there kindergarten through sixth grade. I'm not sure when I crossed paths with Neil and Aaron, but we had that peer group that I know they've talked to you about. Yeah, that was us. Banner had Mrs. Doak, who I remember went to my mom concerned about me because she couldn't give me enough to do. I was finishing things. I learned to read pretty fast. She was having us do Mother's Day crafts, thinking it would take us a long time. I finished mine in one day, and I wanted to do Father's Day crafts. and then we went to first grade, where I remember that specifically because our teacher moved in the middle of the year. Oh, we ended up with 3 teachers that year because we had Miss Sandstrom, and I remember all the girls crying when she left. And then we got Mrs. Weeks, who I think they told us she couldn't get her teaching certificate, which didn't mean anything to a 6-year-old. Mm-hmm. It just meant that Mrs. Weeks wasn't going to keep being our teacher. And then we had Mrs. Price, who moved on to second grade, and some of the kids moved up to her. That's when I went to Cotterell. I had Mrs. Dunges, And what I remember most about Mrs. Dunges is she's the first time I got in trouble for talking. She was mean to me when I talked.
Oh.
But her, every day, she started off with the Pledge of Allegiance, which was normal for everybody. But then we either did the Lord's Prayer or the 23rd Psalm. And so we learned that in there from that. I had Mrs. Gatewood in 3rd grade, Mrs. Langley in 4th grade, who was the first teacher I had been scared to get because she had a reputation that came down.
Yeah.
And I remembered my mom came and told me, she said, okay, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but we just had a parent-teacher conference with Mrs. Langley, and she said that she tells you guys things designed to scare you. Like if you don't get your foot out from under yourself and put both feet on the ground, she's going to come with a knife and cut your leg off.
Oh my!
She said, she told us, I will never do that to your kids, but I tell them I will.
Oh,
So she was the first one I was scared of, but
Miss Langley was in 3rd grade?
4th grade.
4th grade.
And she pushed me, though, in an area that I didn't expect to be pushed. Me and Jason Jones.
Oh, yeah.
We ended up in the spelling bee. And she, it's the first time I'd been pushed academically. She practiced with us every lunch for I don't know how long. And we ended up being the last two left in the spelling bee. And we finished the 4th grade list. And so the judges are like, okay, we have no words left to give them. They're not missing them. And so they just get the 4th grade spelling book. Well, we've been through those too. And so we're getting all those. And so someone comes running in and we hear them say, Mrs. Langley said if they make it through the 4th grade list to start giving them the 5th grade list. We'd never heard of some of those words in our life. We're missing them left and right. And I remember Jason ended up spelling a word right that I'd never heard of before. And so she pushed us.
Yeah.
That was the first time I remember being pushed and being told, hey, you can do better than you're doing.
Yeah.
And we went into Mrs. Weiner where we had the annex with the air conditioning. There were two of us there.
Gotcha.
We had some fun there. We got to play the computer a bit, learn commands. We'd have this game where we had to tell it, go north and then west and then south and then west. And now you have to tell it to open the door. And that was training us to do things like instruct a computer to do certain things. It won't do anything you don't tell us. And then we had Mrs. Wright in 6th grade. And we were at Favor the year before it burned. After that, my teachers start falling off because
we were at Favor the year before it burned?
The year before it burned, because the next year, I remember I rode the bus with someone you may know, John Dewberry.
Yeah.
And so we go there. John and his family were the last ones on our bus route. And John's out there, his dad's out there, and she said, John's school burned last night. I can't take him. There's nowhere for him to go. And so he ended up having to stay home that day unplanned. But yeah, I remember we were talking at school.
So we had, because I was going to say, we went through 6th grade, then it was the year after
It was the year after that it burned. Because it shocked us because we had gotten Mrs. Wright all these presents. And we were sitting there thinking, wow, those probably are all gone now.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah.
Fun time. And it was always fun when my sister would have the same teacher after me because they would realize Amy's not wired like Brian. But it was fun for me because I'd go with my mom back to some of those parent-teacher conferences and see my old teachers again.
So then middle school, junior high for us, you started not remembering as many.
Yeah, there were a lot of them. I remember Mrs. Clark. She was my art teacher. I remember Mr. McNutt and Mr. Prince, the shop teachers. Mr. McNutt taught my dad. I told him, I said, hey, I'm Leon Mace's son. And my aunts came to me and said, and he didn't boot you out? He probably looked at me like, oh gosh, I hope you're not as terrifying as your father was. I remember them. Remember Miss Haas, my English teacher, Mr. Dowdy, my other English teacher, Miss Carlton taught me math in 7th or 8th grade. But I juggled around so many classes there, I can't remember all the names. No. I could go dig out a yearmill and I could remember them all.
There was somebody who knew them. I was like, I don't even know how you... I couldn't do it either. I don't remember. I remember Miss Cadavy, I think, was the only teacher.
Mm-hmm. I remember her, but I didn't have her.
And then there was the science teacher, the lady.
Clymer?
Pfeiffer. No, I'm thinking Clymer.
Okay.
On the bottom floor.
Yes, I had Mrs. Clymer.
Yeah, Miss Clymer. But yeah, I can't remember a whole bunch of the...
I remember now my 8th grade science. She was upstairs. It was Mrs. Pfeiffer because she was also one that pushed me hard.
Okay.
Because I remember I was making C's on her tests. And I'm like, this is not normal for me. In fact, I cried in class about it one day. It's like, what in the world? I studied for a week. And she brought me in and she said, I'm not just asking you to recite things. She said, this is part of what you're going to experience in life. She says, I'm asking you how and why. And this is something when I've taught kids, I've told them, I give you all the puzzle pieces for something. I might not tell you how to put them together, though.
Yeah.
That's your job to figure out how to.
Yeah.
And that's what she was doing with me. And I've always remembered that ever since, because it was kind of an emotional thing for me.
Yeah.
It tore me up.
Uh-huh.
I was used to making A's. I'd tolerate a B. A C was not an area I got into. I might as well have failed if that was, because I worked hard to not do that.
Uh-huh.
But that I don't remember many other than that.
Yeah. So. What was high school like?
High school, I had fun. It was kind of that point where some of the friends you had for a long time, their interests weren't really the same anymore. That was difficult. Seeing your buddies go this way, and it's like, I still want to be your buddy, but you don't want to be my buddy. Yeah. And at the time, you're thinking it's because you don't like me. Well, this wasn't because he doesn't like me. It's because he's interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
Our paths aren't crossing anymore. Yeah. But it was fun. I had my core group, but I was pushed out of my comfort zone there because my freshman year, I had lunch with all my buddies. I never had lunch with my buddies after that. I had to make new friends at lunch, which was terrifying to someone who is quiet and shy and just is sometimes just trying to blend in.
Yeah.
And not get picked on if I can help it. I had to make new friends.
Yeah.
And just find friendly looking faces.
Yeah.
And just buddy up with them at lunch and say, hey, we're going to hang out. So,
and whoever sticks, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And then once you graduated high school, what decisions did you make? Go to college?
I went to UCO. Okay. And one of my high school teachers was really instrumental in getting me hooked into UCO. It was Mary Beth Gilliland.
Oh, yeah.
So I was in art. So I had Mary Beth Gilliland for 5 art classes in 4 years. And she was also a UCO grad. And she took me on a tour of there in our senior year.
Oh, did she?
Introduced
Was
me.
it just you, or did she take several?
No, she took several, but she made sure to saddle up with me and introduce me to teachers there because she knew that's where I wanted to go. I'd heard great things about the art program. And my art plans, that was plan A, and there was no plan B.
Oh.
It was make or break with art, and you figure it out after plan A doesn't work. And so she took me up there and introduced me to some of the teachers, showed me around, showed me where we actually ended up meeting one of the teachers that she had. He was still teaching there. And so that helped me have a familiar face when I went in there that following September, scared to death about what was going on because it's a totally different world I was not used to.
Yeah.
But I went to UCO. I got into their graphic design program, not because I wanted to be a graphic designer. But one of the things a lot of people remember me for from high school was being the cartoonist for a few years.
Yeah.
They had a cartooning class at UCO. That's how I made my major decision. The one cartooning class they had
was in graphic design.
Was in graphic design. So you didn't get to take it if you're an art major, if you're a painter or anything like that. It was one for that group.
Yeah.
And so that ended up getting me into graphic design, which is what I still do today.
Yeah.
So
because art is a little bit more challenging to find work in than being a graphic designer, correct?
It is. It is. If you look at it a certain way, a lot of people looked at art at the time, and my parents were there, and this is one of the things I've actually begun to do professionally. My parents looked at it like, okay, well, we hope you make a living. We hope that you find a gallery that shows your work and you sell a piece for $25,000. Because what are you going to do if you don't?
Yeah.
Well, then in going through graphic design, I found out that there's a whole avenue for paid professional artists' work.
Yeah.
And it may not be painting. It's not subjective. It's meeting the problems of somebody else. You're solving the issues that they have. And that sounds hefty, but it just means, if you needed an ad, I solve that problem by building your ad. And it's not I build it, but it's not my work. It's your work.
Yeah.
And I have to keep that in mind. Where if I draw for myself, I draw whatever I want.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to sell or anything. And so one of the things that I've learned from that, my parents always were supportive of me, but they didn't know how to be supportive of me. Mary Beth Gilliland was the one that was supportive of me.
Yeah.
You want to talk.
She knew how because she was an artist herself, right? Yeah.
Yep. And she was making a living with her art by teaching it. So she wasn't making it; she was teaching it. And all artists still make art, but it was through her, and then through UCO, and then just through trials, I began to realize art is something that you can make a career of. You just don't think you can, and a lot of people don't realize the possibilities that are out there. And I tell people, if you want to see possibilities, just go to the grocery store and go down the cereal aisle. An artist made everything on that aisle.
Wow, yeah.
Every box, every box that especially has a character, has an artist involved in some way.
Is that graphic design, or is that
That would probably characters would probably be more considered illustration. But they graphic designers don't need to know how to draw necessarily. It's a lot of computer graphics work. Doesn't necessarily have to have portrait drawing skills, which is one of the things that I like to do.
Mm-hmm.
But there are all sorts of different things you can get into.
Yeah.
And I tell people, I said, watch a Pixar movie. You guys go watch Pixar, any of the 3 Cars movies. Those cars have sponsors all over them. Well, the animators didn't make those logos. They're busy animating. They had people like me that come in and work with them, and I make their logos. And I talk with them and say, okay, not only am I going to make a logo, but I need to know how to make it work in your computer graphics animated piece. I need to know how I need to give it to you so it looks like it fits on Lightning McQueen's hood.
Yeah.
Because you don't want it to look like it's just taped there. So anyway, I'm getting to a nerdy level of art stuff there.
No, and I'm listening very, very intent. I'm like, oh, okay.
But these are
and I think for me, my daughter's an artist. And so, and then just working with other creatives and entrepreneurs and things like that, oftentimes these are some of our biggest challenges, right? And sometimes I can't. So when I'm working with someone that is a creative on a particular logo or something like that, they're asking me questions. And I was like, I don't know, just do what you think, you know?
And that is the best way to work with a creative in so many ways, because there are people out there who they don't mean badly.
but they want to make a lot of suggestions. You like, that's just not.
The term for that is micromanaging. And even with my boss, I love my bosses. I absolutely love them. But there are sometimes I remind them. I said, "Okay, you're a pastor.
Yeah,
I'm an artist. I'm good at what I do, and I know it because I've done it for a quarter century now professionally. I'm begging you, let me do what I know I'm good at, and I will come back." And over the years, we begin to trust each other.
Yeah,
he knows enough to know that if I show him 2 steps, he knows. Okay, Brian. He called me Bri. Okay, Bri. You've got it. I trust you. It'll show up on Sunday and be wonderful when I preach. Yeah. So, I love that. But I have to. I do counsel people like your daughter. Say, okay, there will be some people you've got to figure out how to please as a creative, because when you're commissioned to do something, that's no longer your work.
Yeah.
If you commission me to do a logo, that's your work. I'm executing it.
Yeah.
But that's your work. And I tell people, scientists and engineers, they operate through logic. Man, artists are all emotion.
Yeah.
We'll get volatile. I get grumpy. I get grumpy with my bosses and coworkers, and I'll say things, this is an awful idea. Why are you having me do this? And they'll come back and say, hey, man, I just had to get that out. I'll be fine. You just need to let me stew for a minute. I'll be fine. If I don't want to talk to you, I won't talk to you. Yeah. But you just need to let me work through my emotions, because everything we do is based on emotion. It's based on our emotion. It's based on the emotion you want people to see when they see your logo. And that's different wiring than an engineer, a mathematician, or a journalist. I've worked with lots of journalists. You can imagine how that went.
Yeah. No.
We are oil and water in some ways.
Yes. Now, whenever I tell, just because I think this is probably a unique thought, like whenever I tell somebody who's an artist, hey, just do what you like, but then they say, well, this is your logo. I'm like, but I'm not the creator. Let me just give you a little bit of the story of what I need, and then
but you're the one who's paying our bills.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And so we feel like we want you to take some of that ownership in there. And so when we ask you too many questions, it's because we want to make sure we don't turn right when you're telling us to go left. Because if we go left and we go 65 miles down left, but you really needed us to go right, man, that's hard to go back. So that's why some of us do want that we want an overly abundant amount of feedback, not criticism necessarily.
Not criticism. You don't want
criticism. We do bristle a little bit, but and I tell people like your daughter, just remember, it's not personal. Yeah. If they're giving you valid criticism and feedback, it's about the work.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
nothing on you.
For sure.
Criticism about you is you're late to work and you look like crud when you showed up. Can you go dress better for the office? Yeah. That's personal.
Yeah.
But saying you don't like my logo work that I did for you, that's not. Yeah. And it's my job to figure out why. You see, because you may not know why you don't like it. Yeah. That's my job to figure that out with you.
For sure, for sure. That's good. That's
So
good.
we chase that art trail. I can go down an art trail for a long way, man.
No,
I
that's
love
good.
what I
That's,
do, and I love helping people do it.
well, the cool thing, this podcast is about you, right? And so this is who you are.
I'm talking a lot.
Like I'd rather not force you to talk about cars when you're an artist. Like people,
man, okay, good, because I can't talk cars. I can't do it.
And so
I turn them on.
No, yeah, that's right.
what I
I
do.
drive them and I try to stay out of the mechanic shop. So
Yes.
yeah. So for fun, like, did you ever? Because I know that you kind of transitioned back to Guthrie.
Mm-hmm.
I know you lived outside of Guthrie, and so. Did you ever get to hang out in Guthrie, like at night, downtown, cruising?
Not very much.
Okay.
No, we were far enough out. We when we came to Guthrie, it was a trip, and we usually had to have a reason to come to Guthrie. We're going to the post office. We're going to the bank. We're going to buy groceries, because being that far out, you had to have a purpose for it.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have all the money in the world growing up, so my dad and mom are watching the gas money and that sort of thing. And of course, then when I got my license, they get me a 1978 Camaro, which got 5 gallons to the mile. So I didn't drive myself very much. So
yeah, he's like, we know how to fix this. Like, get my gas guzzler.
Yeah. Now it had the muffler hung up by a wire hanger so it wouldn't drag, and it had no front on the grill. The grill, you opened the hood by pulling the stick that we wired in. I know when I say stick, I do mean twig.
Yeah,
the twig that was
a
there.
literal stick. But I feel like I remember seeing you sometimes though hanging out downtown.
Sometimes we'd be around there. It would be the odd instance. Sometimes I'd be down there with my friend David Byte. We'd do something here and there after school, or sometimes Greg Stewart and I were working at the Logan County News doing some layout work together. But it was usually again there having a purpose along with it.
Yeah.
By that same token, we didn't do Edmond very much either.
Yeah,
so
just
because we're right there between.
You just in the country hanging out.
Yeah, and
drawing.
And my parents were worried about me because I'd sit in my room all the time and draw, and they'd want me. Can you go get a job? And it's like, well, we're in the middle of nowhere. I don't have any bills. What need do I have? I don't go anywhere. I need paper and pencil, and that's like $1. So I tutored after school. And so I got a little bit of spending money. I tutored with Mrs. Lowe's crew after school, I think it was either 1 or 2 days a week. And we get kids from all ages come in. And you didn't teach them things. I had one guy named Keith who I remember very, very fondly. I'd tutor him in biology. I don't know my science. I don't science, man. Again, I'm emotions. So I just help him look stuff up in his book. And I'd say, well, it's about this. Let's look it up over here. And this page looks like what has your info on it.
Yeah.
And then I'd get, they love to give me the little kids. And I got a little kid one time who we didn't realize was on ADHD medicine. And so he'd come in lethargic. And we didn't realize that. And one day he came in off his medicine. And it's like the devil brought this child today. Because he's bouncing off the walls. If he could have torn the school down, I think he would have.
Yeah.
And we're trying everything because it's like, where did this come from? And Mrs. Lowe, the counselor, and I, he's a sweet kid. But that day, he was heck on wheels. And we were thinking, what in the world is going on? But yeah, I did that for 2 or 3 years. Loved doing that for Guthrie. I would be the guy when people needed something drawn, like they wanted something drawn for someone retired. They wanted a picture of the high school. So they came to me and said, can you draw a big picture of the high school? We're going to frame it and give it to them. So I get little things like that. I drew something for Mrs. Ireton. I drew a windmill for Mrs. Lowe. So just odd little things here and there.
Yeah. So that's really cool.
So no, I did draw. My parents were scared that I was in my room all the time drawing, and I would tell them, how am I going to become the artist on Spider-Man comics if I don't sit and draw Spider-Man 4 hours a day? And I did do this math. When you hear how much per page in a comic book they get paid to draw, and you realize, okay, there's this many comic books, comes out this many times, that's good money.
Oh,
okay. Yeah, I need to work at this. I didn't do that, but
did you ever still want to work for a comic book?
There is the part of me that still this day thinks it would be fun to make them, but the direction of some of them have taken are so far off the things I could feel comfortable doing.
Yeah.
And they're so corporate these days. I mean, these days you can't look anywhere without seeing nerd culture. Well, I tell people in my day when I was a senior and a junior, I was cutting edge. I was the first nerd into those things. in school that I knew of. There were maybe 3 of us.
Yeah.
And we got to go into Miss Gillen's class, and we'd bring in duffel bags full of comic books. Malik Doolin and I in art, we'd read the comic books. We'd draw comic books all the time.
That's cool.
So,
no, that's
really
cool.
I was cutting edge, but 30 years ahead of my time.
Yeah. No, for sure. Now, it sounds as though, from what you're saying, super involved in your kids' school.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
do I smell like a movie theater?
No, but that's what
I did.
I was going to say. You told me you were going to do popcorn, but I don't smell. So I was like, let me eat before he comes, so I won't be like hangry with him.
Well, I smell nothing but popcorn. No, every Friday, I go into the school at 7:30. And I make popcorn. We started doing that when my oldest son had a Washington, D.C. trip. And our part of the fundraising was we went in, we made popcorn every Friday, and I got the money from everyone buying popcorn. And that paid for my trip and Calvin's trip. And so I keep doing that, and I love doing it because I get to meet other parents. I get to meet other kids.
It's a great way,
in there. But yeah, so my wife dutifully and faithfully goes in there with me because I do need a second set of hands.
Uh-huh.
But I'm there at 7:30 in the morning, and she's not a morning person.
Yeah, that's what but thankfully she's willing.
She is willing.
She's willing. That's a good wife. That is a good wife.
She has my back.
Now, do you still have kids at the school, or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, Calvin is the school is Holy Trinity Lutheran, and the kids, it runs from preschool to 8th grade.
Oh, okay.
And this is Calvin's 8th grade year, so we're moving him somewhere else. We're not exactly sure where yet.
Yeah.
Tegan's in 4th. He's got 4 more years. So I don't know, though, when they go to 2 separate schools, if I'll still keep doing that, because I would like to get involved in Calvin's new school a bit, because I'm kind of one of the popular dads there. That the kids loved it when I would do party games.
Uh-huh.
I did mean party games that the kids all left feeling scarred from, but the dads loved it. They would come to me afterwards and say, "Man, that was a great game where you stole all my son's candy and gave it to the girl because he rolled a 1 on his dice. That's awesome." I have fun. I have fun in my kids' lives.
That's good. What do you miss most about just your time in Guthrie growing up?
I miss some of the good friends I had as teachers. I mentioned Mary Beth Gilland. I miss seeing her. Mrs. Ireton. I do miss her. Mr. Stewart.
Uh-huh.
He was one that I was good friends with, and he actually, when we did our reunion this last year, he and I judged with a couple other people, Rustin Burst, and used to be Sarah Bailey now. We judged door decorations while they were getting ready for the spirit assemblies, and so we got to do that together. I got to reconnect with Mr. Stewart and Jim Lee Patterson. She gave me a break I never should have had. Because Mr. Stewart's son Greg and I were good friends, and in our junior year, he said, "I'm going to be the editor along with Sarah Pfeiffer of the newspaper next year, and we've been through art for 3 years. You would be an awesome cartoonist for us. So just enroll in the class, and we'll just go from there. You'll be our art specialist." First day, Miss Patterson's ready to kick me out because I've taken no journalism classes of any kind. I'm in there as the art kid, and Greg and Sarah took her, because she told me this much later. She said, Greg and Sarah came and said, "Hey, don't boot this guy out. He's going to be good for us." And she gave me a break I shouldn't have legitimately had, but it opened so many doors. So I miss the relationships like that. I don't really have that many strong connections other than that. These days, I very rarely am able to make it back. I come back for the reunions.
Yeah.
Somehow I've been our class reunion guy, which I love. Yeah. I think it's a blast.
Who's supposed to be doing it?
I have no idea.
Who was the class president?
Zach Overton.
That's who it should be.
And he did the first one.
He's like, "I'm done."
We talked to the first one. It's like someone does one and they don't want to do it again. And so
it's so much work.
Well, there were a couple of years I put myself out there for it a lot, and it was a lot of work. And so after this, I am happy to get the ball rolling. I'm happy to be support. I will make every end meet that I possibly can.
Are you about to step down?
No, I'm not going to step down. I have too much fun being involved with it, but I don't want to head it. I'm happy to let someone else drive that car. Just put me in the passenger seat. I'll navigate you.
Gotcha.
I love it. But one of the things that was so fun this year, every reunion, it seems like there is a different crew that shows up.
Yeah.
Because we don't ever get all 180 something. Yeah. together. And this year there were different people than there were 5 years before that and 5 years before that. But somehow I am the guy that people come to and say, okay, I don't recognize that person. Brian, who is that?
Oh, and you got them.
I usually I've got him, but there is one, and I will not tell you the people because I'm not going to throw these people under the bus. But there was one person we thought, okay, it's either this person or this person in the yearbook. We've pegged him. It's one of these two people. And so two of the women from our class came to us and said, we need to know who this is. Like, I have no idea on this.
Didn't
one.
have a
It's
clue.
either this guy or this guy. And so the rest of the night, I'm not going to tell you who those two girls are because they said they'd kill me if I let anyone know that they didn't know some of those names. But I'm the guy that I know people. I get so many hugs from people that were in high school. We were maybe acquaintances. We knew each other's name.
Yeah.
I get hugs from them now.
Yeah.
They come up to me to hug me.
Yeah.
I'm a hugger. I'll hug anyone that wants a hug at our reunions. Y'all, you have to. And if you're a spouse that I know of one of our, I'll hug you too.
That's
I just have a blast.
That's the cool thing about reunions, though, or getting older. Like, it's like, oh my goodness.
Some of us don't look the same enough.
Oh, we don't look the same. But what I was going to say is, like, whatever happened in high school was in high school.
Yeah.
You know, like, and whoever you were, you're completely different now. Like, most people change.
Well, and I had that exact conversation with a few friends that didn't want to come because they didn't have the best high school experiences. And they didn't come to a few reunions. And I told some of them, I said, good. I said, look, it's nothing but love when you show up there. I said, you show up there and they're going to be happy to see you. Yeah. And so they did. And they've been coming ever since, and they love it. And I said, "See, the people here are just—they're happy to know you."
Yeah, way to go. That's
so.
Good.
I can't tell you how much I enjoy the class. Lets me do the reunions. Yeah. They let me kind of corral them all in a neat little Facebook group that now Neil's beginning to help me with because we have a lot of people trying to get in there, and I don't know who they are, and so. I have to ask for help. Guys, I may not remember this guy. I don't want to turn this lady out if she's part of our class. And I just don't remember. Spouses of class members we let in there. Maybe a person a year behind or a year ahead of us just to stay connected. But yeah, I've needed some help with that group.
That's good.
So I'm privileged that they look at me as that.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to stay connected to people. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. And it sounds like you find ways like doing the popcorn and doing game nights and things like that for people and to be able to stay connected and build community. So thank you so much. How can people find you on social media?
The best way to find me is on my Facebook page. It's the one thing that out of everything, I tinker with all my stuff, but it's one of the things that stays around. Facebook.com/Brian Mays. Stayed up till midnight to get my name when they released him. And then I have Brian Mays Art, which has my portrait drawings. And that's going to change up here a little bit as I try to teach people a little bit more through that, so they can find my Brian Mays Art on social media as well. So.
Gotcha. Well, Brian, thank you so much.
Anything else I can do for you?
No, man, this is it. Thank you for doing this.
You've let me share some fun stuff. I hope I haven't gone way too off on you.
No, it's sure. No, that's what I just did Miss Ironton. I think you listened to it. And
yes. That was great.
Yeah.
I could listen to Mrs. Ironton for a week straight.
But she was the same way. She was like, I hope I did. I'm like, no, this is all about you. So,
are there any other questions you need me to answer?
No.
All right, man. No. Well, thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening on the GuthrieAmerica podcast, where we are on a mission to have every story told. Will yours be next?